So we're going to turn it over to Jason right away. Jason is joining us from the Wisconsin DNR, and he's with us in Madison today.
Thank you very much. So today's seminar is on the control of non-native Phragmites within the Great Lakes basins. I am a water resources management specialist at the Wisconsin DNR. I'm stationed in the central office here in Madison. And so I help coordinate our statewide non-native Phragmites control activities and our Glyceria maxima control activities. I also work extensively with Brock Woods. He has a joint position at UW Extension and Wisconsin DNR. So with Phragmites australis, we've had native Phragmites in Wisconsin for millennia. It's native to us. However, we've had non-native Phragmites, and it's arrived in Wisconsin around the 1980s. The first records of it have occurred along the Lake Michigan shoreline, and there's a Jackson County mining site that's found further to the west. Those are our first instances of non-native Phragmites in the state. Phragmites is a facultative plant. That means it can live in both wetland conditions and non-wetland conditions. And so it spreads inland, mostly along roads, and then into waterways and into our wetlands. For some basic introduction between the two subspecies, they vary by their stem color, their stem texture, and there are differences with the ligule, so where the leaf sheath meets the stem of the plant. There's differences amongst their seeds, which are these, they've got a little structure called a glume, and there's differences in the seed head and leaf color. If you ever see Phragmites populations, one of the easiest ways to distinguish between the two of them is to use a phrase that we've called, which is naked is native, so that in fall and winter, the leaf sheaths on the native varieties, they come off very easily, while the non-native remains. So that's a quick way of distinguishing between the two of them. So with Phragmites, it threatens our waters. It's a tall, exotic perennial grass. It reduces shoreline use. It changes the aesthetics of the land. It has an impact on land use values, the visibility of waters, visibility of wetlands. It reduces the plant and animal diversity wherever it's found. Reduces recreational uses and wetland ecosystem service values. So as you can see within this picture in the upper right-hand corner, that's how tall it can grow, 8 to 10, 12 feet tall, and that's just a person for scale. Okay. Phragmites is spreading inland. Vehicles and mowers moving along roadways. It can spread vegetatively and also by seed. So if you look in that grayish bucket, those are just stem cuttings, and from each one of those, a new Phragmites plant is appearing from it. It can be spread by contaminated fill with the rhizomes. Phragmites is a rhizomatous plant, so it grows clonally. Other human activities such as wastewater treatment facilities, landscaping, and hunter blinds, people can accidentally move it from place to place. Some wastewater treatment facilities have used non-native Phragmites to dewater their sludge, and it can also be spread by natural means, so birds, winds, flowing water, and floodplains. We've had a history of treating Phragmites since before 2011, and that was treated in smaller, isolated projects as it would be treated incidentally. In 2011, we began systematically treating it along the Lake Michigan shoreline, and then in 2013, the DNR, under the project that I'm funded from, began an early detection rapid response project targeting satellite populations. And so by satellite, we're saying these smaller outlying populations away from a larger, denser core. Coming into 2014, we had treated 280 sites. In 2015, we upped it to 1,223 sites. And this past year, we spent our time retreating formerly treated sites. So when we were dealing with Phragmites, we had to develop a systematic plan for treating it throughout the Great Lakes basins. Our funding was from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, so we had a limitation on how far we could use our money. So we had some constraints. So during the first year of treatment, it ended up being a lot less expensive than we had initially thought. So we needed to prioritize our areas for maximum effect. We also had incomplete information about where the Phragmites was found in the landscape and how much there actually was. As time went along with the project, we modified our treatment plans and made new decisions based on new information. So when we're prioritizing our control efforts, we were first looking at just the distribution of the species. So looking at this graphic, we were trying to target these smaller outlying satellite populations to prevent the spread moving further westward in the state. So with these, you're going for sites that have the lowest density of infestation. You want to eliminate small, isolated infestations. You want to prevent it from reproducing and spreading elsewhere. You want to continually monitor it beyond known locations and find potentially new sites, so there's new reconnaissance in this red ring area. And this requires the least amount of coordination and commitment to have these areas be controlled because they're usually on a few landowner properties. As you move from this red ring to the orange to the yellow, the more difficult it becomes because it's becoming denser in the landscape. So for planning it out, these red areas, they conform largely to our NR40 prohibited counties and then counties that were adjacent to the NR40 boundaries. And then as we moved further eastward, we're getting into this orange and yellow zone. If we want to look at it on a density basis, we're looking at it on part of this invasion curve, where we've got the area infested and the area infested, the control cost, and how much there is in the landscape and time. So you've got this part of the invasion curve where you've got an introduction, and then it first appears in the landscape, then people start to notice it, then land managers are aware of the problem, and this is where eradication is still feasible. But if it ends up being ignored or it slips through detection, it can increase more and more through time and becomes harder and harder to do. So for our work, we were trying to hit this kind of purple box area, areas in this low density early detection and where eradication was still feasible. So to to treat this, we had to have some fundamental questions answered. We needed to build partnerships. We needed to know who was working on the Phragmites. We needed to do reconnaissance and data exchange. We needed to know what was known. We needed to map it, where it was exactly, and form a strategic plan where to spend the funding. Beyond that, we had to file some permits, do some outreach to landowners and gain their permissions, and then hire the contractors to treat. So for the partnerships, we work with three major groups. We have the Cooperative Invasive Species Management Areas, these are CISMAS, the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, GLFWC, and the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. So with Cooperative Invasive Species Management Areas, you will often hear them being described as being CISMAS. They are nonprofit organizations that are dedicated to invasive species issues, and they often collaborate with Wisconsin DNR and citizen groups. They conduct outreach, reconnaissance, and control invasive species. They are also our liaison between actions at the statewide level and things that might be going on at the local level. CISMAS also tend to cover multiple counties. If you go to the IPAW website, this is their most recent map, and depending upon where you are in the state, you'll have your local CISMA. As you can see in the center of the state, and then down to the south, there is no corresponding CISMA coverage. However, there may be different RC&Ds, Golden Sands RC&D. They help us with some invasive species efforts. And there are also different county conservationists that you can contact within those respective areas. With GLFWC, they represent 11 Ojibwa tribes across Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan, and they're dedicated to preserving hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. And GLFWC has an online database of native and non-native Phragmites populations. Also with our treatment activities, they also coordinated treatment within the reservations, and they were instrumental in helping us tackle Phragmites in the north, as well as get new reports. So for mapping, we had to collect all known Phragmites records. So I collected data from our Wisconsin SWIM system. That is a surface water integrated monitoring system. Partner records people's spreadsheets, files, forms, reports, anything we could get our hands on, and a variety of online databases, so things like EdMaps, GISN, Gledin, and others. So once all this was put together, it started to form the first efforts to what's called the Invasive Species Archive, which I'll get to in just a moment. And once it was all assembled, it showed us the survey gaps, and it helped us build assessment tools for further assessment. So this is a separate project that developed from our Phragmites work, and so this is the Invasive Species Archive. It currently holds more than 114,000 records. It's not just Phragmites, it's multiple species defined within counties or areas. So everything from terrestrial, wetland, and aquatic species, restricted and prohibited species under NR40. It has all of these different kinds of things. And anybody can use these records. So if you've got Google Earth, which is free, or if you've got ArcGIS, you can use it. If you want a copy of this and instructions how to use it, just send me an email at jason.gramberg@wisconsin.gov. So from our Phragmites data, we developed some additional mapping tools. So we were looking at population density. So using this thing called a kernel analysis, we can see how dense something might be in a landscape. It's a heat map. So the redder something is on the landscape, the more records there are. And if we have a high density of records and no corresponding records nearby, that suggested to us additional reconnaissance because we were expecting these to act as large source populations and sending their propagules elsewhere in the immediate landscape. Also, we looked at invasion fronts. So we took our different Phragmites records and we buffered them by the known dispersal distance for Phragmites, and then we could have an idea about our invasion fronts. So if you remember back to those nested rings, the red to orange to yellow, this analysis helps us understand where those red, orange, and yellow areas may be, and where that outermost front of records occurs. So if you've got a few isolated populations, they tend to be high priority targets. So we've got a few of them here, and they were higher priority to treat than these highly dense locations found further east. Also from the Phragmites archive, we were able to use it to get some aerial imagery, some training for that. And using verified records, we could use that to help us develop a search image. So when we're looking at aerial imagery, we can pick them out in the landscape and then pursue them on the ground. With our strategic plan, we did have some constraints, like I said before, because we were limited to acting within the GLRI basin areas. That was the limit of our funding, so we could act within the Lake Superior Basin in the north and the Lake Michigan Basin in the east, and any counties that either intersected partially or wholly, that was the limit of our treatment. And we also used the NR40 rule for helping us identify areas where we would have prohibited records versus restricted. So given all this information, how did we get the most from the available funds? So we took our basin boundaries, we looked at our NR40 markers, and we used some of that information from those models we developed to help pick out some priority counties. And then from within that, we wanted to pursue areas that were important for our tourism industry, especially in the Northern Lake Country, and pursue targets so that it would help prevent the spread to western counties. So if we look at our treatment progress from 2014 to 2016, we had a large number of new sites reported through our mining process, which was ongoing, and we also had more sites being treated overall. So with future Phragmites treatment areas, we are debating on whether or not we're going to treat within the Marinette and Oconto areas, which is marked in red, or treating within the Lake Winnebago drainage. Treating within the Lake Winnebago area would allow us to complement the Bay Lake Regional Planning Commission treatment zones, and they are currently treating a lot of Phragmites found around the city of Green Bay. And we're going to be looking at some of the data that we have and the prospects for complete control. What we would like to do is fill in the treatment gaps from what we did in the past and what other people are currently doing. So citizen involvement in our Phragmites control is very important because we've had citizens give us reports. They've talked with their local town governments. The towns have spoken with us. Citizens have provided us a numerous reports, either by phone call or by email. We've got lots of reports appearing on these online websites, so EdMaps and Glidden. And then following our control activities, we still have many sites that need to be confirmed for control. We've sprayed some of these sites multiple times, but we're not quite sure whether or not they've been eradicated. Many of these sites, they're distributed throughout several counties on both public and private lands. So if you are interested, we can provide to you a list of possible locations for monitoring. If you are interested, just let me know. Send me an email at jason.gramberg@wisconsin.gov. And also for our citizen involvement, we've got a native seed available for rehabilitating our formerly treated Phragmites sites. So this is a project that Brock Woods is leading, and he's calling it Nurture the Natives. And so using native seed from Wisconsin, we can potentially restore our formerly treated sites that you see on the left, and then rehabilitate them to something more native on the right. We've got hundreds of sites. We want to keep the invasives off these areas, and we want to prevent Phragmites from returning or other invasive species from colonizing it. We've got, from our list of seeds, we've got pollinator-friendly plants, and it can help beautify sites and help attract tourist dollars. Many of these sites are along rights-of-way. They are mostly located in the Great Lakes Basin counties. Some sites are going to require additional work to remove the old Phragmites standing biomass, either by cutting it or burning it. And we've got free native seed for replacing these sites. If you're interested, you can send us an email at brock.woods or jason.gramberg@wisconsin.gov. And with that, I will leave it open for any questions.